like life's too short. You only got one, and it's not all about awards. It's not all about how much money you got in the bank. I love getting better, and I love improvement, and I'm more suited to environments that demand a high level of improvement. I'm inspired to work with people that push the envelope. I'm not a cruising kind of person, whether that's professional or personal. I just like, let's keep pushing it. We can do this. Hey, we can really improve here. Now, if we really improve, focusing on the process and the outcome is we win, wonderful. And I'm very fortunate that I have friends and I have my wife and my family that also looks to improve and make the most out of life. And I think that's it.
Hey, Mile 40 fam. Today's podcast episode is brought to you by the leaders in male grooming at Manscaped. They're helping us spice up the hair care regimen on our heads with something fresh. No, it's not a new razor. It's not ball deodorant. Get ready for the game-changing new Scalp Buffer by Manscaped. Let's break down why you need to add this bad boy to your hair care routine. First things first. Check out these thick silicone bristles. They're 100% antibacterial. No more germs hitching a ride on your head. The bristles gently exfoliate your scalp, and the product helps reduce flaking caused by dry skin and buildup. The bristles enhance shampoo penetration for more foam and less product juice. It's not just about feeling good. A better lather means better cleaning power. You can also pair it with the 2-in-1 shampoo and conditioner from Manscaped for the ultimate hair care routine. These products are designed to work together, giving your hair the nourishment and strength it needs. Simply put, the Scalp Buffer is your scalp's secret weapon. Its antibacterial silicone bristles keep your scalp healthy, maximizes shampoo performance, gives you a soothing massage, kicks bacteria to the curb, and stores away like a champ. Take your scalp from zero to hero with the Scalp Buffer. Get 20% off plus free shipping with the code MILE40 at manscaped.com. That's 20% off plus free shipping with the code MILE40 at manscaped.com. Thank you for tuning in to the Mile 40 podcast. I am Bishoy Tadros, the author of Break Barriers and Audacious, both of which are sold on Amazon. And I invite you to join me as I engage with guests to discuss those bounce back moments that we encounter on our personal journey. Mile 40 is a forum to learn about how athletes, professionals, and leaders of all backgrounds stare down moments in life where the only option is to rise up. The Mile 40 podcast strives to remind listeners that the comeback is always greater than the setback. Welcome back to another episode of the Mile 40 podcast. We just keep rocking and rolling. I'm incredibly grateful for you all continuing to tune in. If you haven't already, please be sure to hit subscribe if you're listening on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube. Also, check out the show notes. Pick a copy of Audacious or Break Barriers. There's a discount code in there for you all. Today's episode is one I'm particularly excited about. It's taken a little bit of time to schedule this one, but I do believe that we made it right in time to kick off the fall season. And so this is perfect. Today I have Nick Stone. He's a native of Melbourne, Australia, moved to New York City in 2010. And you may know him as the founder and CEO of Bluestone Lane, an Australian influence lifestyle and hospitality brand based in New York, New York. Since opening in July 2013, Bluestone has become one of the fastest growing premium coffee and cafe brands in New York City, having opened in excess of 75 locations since. You're all over the country now, right? Like on the West Coast as well, right?
Yeah.
So you're everywhere now. You've employed over 1,000 staff, revenue exceeding $70 million. We're going to dive into, how you built Bluestone and everything that you've gone through professionally. But on the personal front, Nick's background is in finance. He spent 10 years in the world of banking. Prior to banking, he was a professional Australian rules football player for 6 seasons, having been selected in the 99 AFL NFL national draft from Wellesley College in Australia. Nick, a lot to dive into here. Thank you for joining me.
Great to be here. Bishoy, it's taken a while. I know I've been hard to get a hold of, but thrilled to be here and keen to chat. And thanks for the introduction. It's very flattering. You got your stats right and everything. So well done.
Of course, man. Look, I'm a huge, huge fan of what you've built. Like I told you before, I popped onto this recording. I spend most of my summers out in Montauk, lived in Chelsea, lived in the West Village. Bluestone Lane is a staple in each of those areas. And it was definitely a huge part of my life, especially when I lived in those parts of the city. So this personally means a lot to me to have you on and to get to know the man behind the institution that you've built. Let's take a quick step back, just give the audience a little bit more background, really about just family, childhood in Australia, and let them know a little bit about where you grew up.
For sure. It's even better that you're a local and you've been to lots of different Bluestones. So I'm as you said in the intro, I'm from Melbourne, Australia. Grew up in Melbourne and had a wonderful childhood. Uh, being Australian's a pretty lucky card to be dealt, and fantastic quality of life, environment, huge country but small population, great sense of adventure, teamwork, give it a go, and just a really supportive environment. Loved loved playing sports, loved learning, loved traveling, loved music. It's just I was very very lucky. I have one brother who's actually living in New York now, who runs, he's the chief brand and culture officer of Bluestone Lane. And so it was terrific. And then in my final year of high school, I was drafted to an AFL team, Aussie Rules or Australian Football League. I was definitely a journeyman. I was in the system for 6 years professionally, played at 3 different teams, 2 years at each of the 3 teams. But my career wrapped up when I was 23, just before my 24th birthday. So in the AFL, you typically get drafted when you're either 17 or 18. I got drafted just before my 18th birthday. So didn't have the ability to drive a car to training until I got my license, and my parents were dropping me off. And I hadn't finished actually my senior year, or what we call year 12 in Australia, final exams. So went to university at the same time while I played AFL, which was very fortuitous considering my AFL career wasn't as long as I'd hoped for. But I transitioned into banking and I worked primarily in corporate finance and investment banking in Australia. And then I had the opportunity to basically transfer to New York City, which was always my dream. I was obsessed with New York. I love New York. I love the fact that you could be in the epitome of commerce, arts, music, dining, sports, all in all on one island, primarily in Manhattan, and just the vibrancy, the cosmopolitan, eclectic nature, the spontaneity. It was just so intoxicating. When I visited, it was like a dream come true on holiday, and then I had to find my way there. So moved there in 2010. I was actually chasing my girlfriend, Alexandra, who became my wife. Just an extraordinary person and partner, and someone that has been so supportive of me and our family, particularly with the journey of Bluestone. But while I was in New York and when I moved there, I just couldn't believe how different the coffee culture was. And products, one thing, different type of coffee. Australia's very much specialty, is not built around chains and is not dominated by chains where it is in the States. 70% of all coffee shops are either Starbucks or Dunkin'. In Australia, there is no Dunkin'. In Australia, Starbucks failed. There is no Pete's Coffee. There is no Coffee Bean and Tea Leaf. There's no Dutch Brothers. There's no Seven Brew. There's no Tim Hortons. It's this independent, owner-operated specialty way. And the unlock there is well beyond just better quality coffee and food. But it's this feeling that you are a local, not a customer, that you are appreciated and you are part of a community. You are recognized, you are acknowledged. We know your name, face, and order. And that was the bit that was really missing, particularly when I went into started banking in New York. Because when I moved across, I was actually did part of my MBA in the States. And then when I started, which was on February the 1st, 2011, I couldn't believe how different the daily ritual was. In Australia and in London, I worked in London as well. We would start the day as a team and go get coffee. And then the afternoon, we'd go get coffee because we didn't often know what time we'd go home. We might go home at 5, 6. Sometimes we go home at 5 in the morning. Who knows? But that daily ritual of getting in the elevator, chatting, the socializing, going to your local, walking in where someone says, "Hey, Nick, how are you, mate?" That was missing in coffee. I could see it in things like wash and fold. I could see it in boutique fitness. I could see it in manis and pedis. And we lived in West Village for 10 years. And there was so many mani and pedi places, and everyone would be really loyal to their beautician, or it's like really loyal to their hairdresser. But they treated coffee like it was just homogenous. It was a product. It was generic. There was no feeling. There was no it was just transactional, a customer relationship, not a localized relationship. So Bluestone was basically going to be the antidote to that. And the first one opened while I was still working full time in Midtown Manhattan in the middle of July 2013, around the corner from my office where I worked on Park Avenue. And just went from there.
What corner of Park Avenue?
It was on 50th, between 49th and 50th, on
Okay.
Third Avenue. So
Yeah.
I was on 47th and Park in JP Morgan building, 270 Park. We would exit on Lex, walk 2 blocks north, and then cross to Third. It was below the Smith. It was 805 Third Avenue, next to the Smith and Wolenski's for people who have dined there in New York, which is an absolute institution, an amazing restaurant. And it was 200 square feet, no seating, limited standing space. There was some seating in the atrium. It was all about word of mouth. We had no signage. We had no branding. We weren't allowed a sandwich board or an A-frame out the front. It was literally impossible to find unless someone took you. And that was part of the mystique. That was part of the allure that made it magical. It was in a great the geographic location was terrific because so many of the Australian banks had offices on that side. So you had the big four Aussies, which is ANZ, NAB, CBA, and Westpac. But then you had Macquarie, and then you had a lot of Aussies working at JP Morgan. You had a lot of Aussies working at Citi, and they could all get to this location. And they brought their friends, and they were really parochial and proud about it. And that's how it evolved. And it was built through by focus on two lenses: one, customer centricity, and two, having experience in advising and financing businesses. Because I had never worked a single day in hospitality before we started Bluestone Lane, so it was trial by fire. But I was also unshackled and didn't have any of the precedence and training that a lot of people in hospitality have, where perhaps they wouldn't push the envelope and think as laterally as what I was able to do without any without any rules. I could just challenge, and it worked out. It worked out well.
It does feel like, in a way, you're making your own rules from a consumer. Like, from my perspective, someone that did not know you very personally, was just watching the growth of your business, was just seeing your different locations pop up, seeing how you built your locations. You were creating your own rules, and that's very apparent. One thing I want to call out: I actually worked at 270 Park. I was at JP Morgan at 270 Park right around that time.
Wow,
Uh,
same
so
building.
yeah, so I used to work in that building. So I'm very now. That's why I asked specifically about where I was, because now it's all coming together. So that's fantastic. That's amazing. Um, I want to continue the trajectory, but I do have a question I want to ask you, because you know you're obviously a high performer, but I want to ask, growing up, how did your parents characterize you? Like, what did they, were you like a terror as a child, or were you, um, yeah, how would you describe yourself as a child?
I'm an eldest child. I'm one of two. I'm very much a rule follower. I am very principle based, values orientated. So a lot of my parents, when they talk about moments as a child that they were really proud of, is I would always try and help people. And we used to have someone in our street that was an alcoholic, and he had a house, and the house was just, it was a hoarder's palace. There was things everywhere, and he would always be out the front smoking a pipe, actually. And I befriended this guy because I felt sorry for him. I was like, "Oh, you don't seem to have many friends." I was like 10 or 11, and I used to ask him, like, can I get you some food or a drink? And he'd always say, "Oh, can I have a drink?" But wouldn't ask me for alcohol. He just asked for a drink. And I would also like always give my pocket money away if I saw someone like less fortunate. So I have a strong um, orientation or an intrinsic drive to help people and be part of teams. That's the other thing. Like I was always pretty good at team sports. I wasn't a great individual sportsman, and I wasn't that passionate about individual sports. I just loved being a part of a team. I love training as a team. I love the social rituals. So I think that they would describe me as someone that likes to help others. That is certainly loves being part of a team, loves pushing the envelope and coaching and helping and challenging. And I think the third thing would be I'm proud of the tenacity I've had and commitment. You know, I've had a lot of challenges. It on paper, a lot of people assume Nick Stone, you've had three careers and you know you've done pretty well, what have you. Like I got my childhood dream extinguished 3 times, you know, before the age of 23, and, like, when you get cut from a professional sports team, that's pretty devastating as a young person. You know, I got delisted at 19. It's not like you lose your job and no one knows about it. It's on every paper. It's on the TV. You have so many people calling you or just saying, "Oh yeah, you're not obviously good enough," and it's a hard thing. And that happened 3 times before I was 24, and then I had to jump into another industry and leverage transferable skills. Yes, I'd been at university the whole time, so I went from undergrad and then I did my master's degree. I was determined to keep studying because I just knew that life's short and I want to explore and I don't want to be just even if I was a super successful athlete, I just didn't want to be an athlete. I wanted to do other things. I wanted to have that mastery of a different industry and align on purpose and what a company's trying to achieve. Again, it gets back to team. And so I I think that don't give in, that tenacity, that commitment, not all the time I've got as much self-belief as others. That plays my football career. I didn't really believe in myself and that I could do it, especially when I was playing at the top level. I would play well at the reserve grade and dominate. Then I'd go to the top level and I'd doubt myself so much so that I would almost be paralyzed or hoping that the ball doesn't come to me. And how do you perform with that type of mindset? And like back then, I just don't think mental coaching was at the level that it is now. But I've tried to use that adversity to fuel me into my other careers. And then, Bluestone has probably been the mother of all challenges. We've had to navigate existential crisis with the pandemic. Then we had to navigate, and we still are now, work from home thematic. Our business was built around coffee shops and office buildings and inner urban markets, not in any suburbs. We had one store in a suburb when COVID hit. It's been extremely hard, but I've never given in. And a lot of times, I'm sure people would have said, there's no way out here, just cut and run. But I've just willing to do whatever it takes. And I think my special sauce has been be able to sell a vision and align with the team to get them to back it and believe, despite all of the external metrics and the feedback and the noise that it's a waste of time. You're not going to make it. Why are you doing that? You should join this company. Don't follow. And I'm deeply indebted. That is why Bluestone's still here. And I think they're probably it's a long way of describing how my parents would probably describe me as a child, but I'm very grateful, and I'm very very, and I don't mean this, and I'll shut up in a second. My childhood in Australia and life in Australia is pretty special. It really really is. They call it the lucky country, and it kind of really is. It's you're encouraged to do things. It's it's hard for people to get their head around that the population of Australia is only half the population of California. It's smaller than the population of Texas, but you see Aussies doing exceptional things everywhere. Everywhere. You'll go to some random bar in Scandinavia. There'll be an Aussie there. You look up some company and then the CEO is Australian. Or look at how we perform in sports or in arts or in music. Like the Olympics, we're always like top 4, top 5, but we've got a population that's relatively small. But we have this belief, and I think it's because we're so far away from everyone else, other than New Zealand and the Pacific Islands, that you gotta chance your arm. You got to give it a go, give it a crack, as they say in Australia, and that really liberates this exploration and this imagination about going overseas and exploring and seeing the rest of the world and chancing your arm, because you can always fall back into what is a pretty safe and warm nest that is Australia. So I feel very blessed to have been born in Australia and just so fortunate to have the family construct I do, particularly, and which is extended with Alexandra's family and Alexandra, and now our family with our 3 kids. It's the most important thing, and it has been it's been nothing but beauty, and I'm so grateful.
No, thank you for opening up and being vulnerable with us because to your point, you know, people can see Nick Stone's resume. And I think the presumption off the bat is this guy's never seen failure. Like everything, it's been a win after win after win. Just by looking at the resume alone, and on top of that, you we're always in highly competitive arenas, right? When you think about the world of sports to the world of finance and then to the world of hospitality with absolutely no background. And my presumption is, and correct me if I'm wrong, despite the fact that you have, a wonderful resume education wise, I bet your best source of education has been your lived experience with Bluestone. So, I mean, I bet that's the best form of MBA that you may have had when it comes down to it. And your comments with regards to life back home, we had Dan Churchill on the show not too long ago. Incredible chef, just finished up Leadville, the 100 miles out there, and you guys exude such a wonderful emotion of how you approach life with um, a sense of positivity and a drive toward your aspirations. There's a lot of people who grew up in different environments who would have ruled out the possibility of doing any of the things that you've done earlier on in life. And here you are, given everything that you've done so far. And I feel like you're still just getting started despite everything that you've accomplished. You guys just opened up a spot at Newark Airport, right?
Yes, that's
Is that the
correct.
only airport you're in right now?
Yeah, we've got a number coming down the pipeline. That's been a great test case, and it's done extremely well. Not only has it, economically performed really well, people are just blown away that you can get that level of food and coffee in a international airport. And then thirdly, like it won best coffee, it won best burger. We beat Shake
Burger.
Shack,
Wow.
we beat all these other players, and it was voted best coffee and best burger by all of the staff that work in the airport. It's like thousands of people. So yeah, it's I really appreciate what you said. I think I'm good friends with. Oh, I would say I'm good mates with Dan. He's a great guy, and I've known him. I've known Dan Churchill for well over probably 10 years, and I admire him greatly. He's someone that has created an incredible career, but he's had stumblings, and
He talks about his, yeah.
he's just kept pushing forward. And I think that sense of positivity is a really amazing Australian trait. And
Yeah.
I think Aussies are positive, and I think Aussies are very good at socializing.
Yeah, you lift
Even
each other
if you're
up.
shy, even if you're shy, I find that Aussies can often small talk and try things.
Yeah.
they've never gone for a run. They've never been in a running group. They'll just try. They never played tennis. They'll just try. And I love the fact that they're a bit unencumbered from that perspective, and they'll just give it a go. But yeah, like life's too short. You only got one, and I don't. I just it's not all about awards. It's not all about uh, how much money you got in the bank and your title. I love getting better, and I love improvement, and I'm more suited to environments that demand a high level of improvement. I'm inspired to work with people that push the envelope. I'm not a cruising kind of person, but whether that's professional or personal. I don't like just um, you know near enough's good enough. I'm sort of not the approach where it's like you know berating people and I'm selfish. I just like let's keep pushing it. We can do this. We can really improve here. Now, if we really improve, focusing on the process and the outcome is we win, wonderful. But I really enjoy trying to learn and get better, and I'm very fortunate that have friends and I have um, my wife and my family that also looks to improve and keep and make the most out of life. And I think that's it. But I've never lost focus on what's really important. I think at times I've orientated more towards professional endeavors, which is maybe at the time was the right decision in the short term. It wasn't probably ideal personally, but you live and learn, and you evolve. And you are. I'm very different now in my early 40s than I was in my early 30s, and yeah, it takes time and experience to really be able to see it. And as you said about getting a real MBA in business, absolutely. I used to, I've got two postgraduate degrees, and I was in banking, and I used to think, oh, I could advise this company. I understand this company so well, and like you should do this, you shouldn't do that, you should get rid of all these people, restructure this, spin it out, yada yada yada. I never actually executed it myself. Like I've never tangibly done it. Where Bluestone, very small business, but you have to make consequential decisions all the time, and some of the consequences of the decisions are you are going to fail, or you're going to survive, or you are going to be able to raise money or not, or you're going to be able to hire that person or not, which is a massive unlock. They are. It's just a lot different, and I've got the most admiration for small business. I went from AFL into advising corporations, institutional corporations. I used to think that was hard. Oh my goodness, that is easy. That is really easy compared to what small business is. Families that have built a life for themselves off their sweat, blood, and tears. That is absolutely inspiring. People that work in Bluestone Lane that run our stores, they run $1 million businesses. Like that's I think less than I don't know. It's a crazy stat. It's like less than 3% or 5% will ever run a business that generates more than $1 million a year, and a lot of them come from really really tough backgrounds, whether the family construct was broken or unsupportive, or lack of education, lack of money, and economic sort of resources and mobility, or something as a significant barrier like English is a second language to them, and they've had to persevere and adapt. And it's absolutely the most inspiring thing. It is truly the two best things with Bluestone are one, when locals tell you how much it means to them, that coffee or that daily ritual, it just means so much to me. And then when you see team members develop, they can like come in as a server making, you know, 20, 25 bucks an hour, including tips. And then suddenly they run a store. And then next thing they're running multiple stores and they're on six figures. Like, or they've never had a day of paid time off. They've had leave unpaid, which they never take, and which is the opposite of Australia. Everyone gets paid leave. And that's why Aussies are always on holidays and doing like, oh, I'm going to 3 weeks in Europe or whatever, or 3 weeks going around Asia. So yeah, they're the big drivers, and it's such a good feeling. It's been no matter what happens at Bluestone, whether it's financially successful or not, um, uh, those two intrinsic drivers have been amazing, and I'll always say, I made a difference to some people. Yeah.
Yeah. One of the things that absolutely like distinguishes you and I'm so makes me just so proud to have you on the show is your level of grounding around how you approach the business. Because as you know, with the culture that we have here in the States, there are a lot of executives that are heads down that can't take a step back and look at the bigger picture. And a lot of it is geared toward bottom line. A lot of it is geared toward meeting expectations. And it's just, the open and shut case of, well, like this is business. It's what we got to do versus the perspective that you're bringing, which considers your employees, which considers the families of your employees and the life that you're impacting through Bluestone and what it is that you're building. And that's something to be incredibly proud of. And from my end, something that's incredibly refreshing to listen in on, just to hear you kind of elaborate further on, because I do think it's a clear distinguisher. Um, and you had mentioned, earlier on in the podcast around the percentage of chains. You call out Starbucks and you call out Dunkin', obviously, as being the two names that everybody's most familiar with here. When you think about Bluestone and what you're building and the way that it's grown, it from the outside, it feels like there's been very organic pivots, right? Like we talked about Newark Airport. We didn't even really go into much detail about how you pivoted during COVID, but there's been an emphasis on catering, right? That was one of the things that you guys did post COVID.
Yes. Yeah. Well, during there's a couple of huge things. One, we never had third party delivery. You could never get Bluestone delivered. We had very limited digital infrastructure. We had a loyalty app that no one used. So the pivots.
I used it just to be
Good on
clear.
you, mate. You are one of the anomalies. But
Yeah.
we went from maybe 10% of transactions, 5% or something, to like 100% from 2 years. The only way that you could order and pay was via a digital app or online ordering. So we really pioneered a lot of those things. But yeah, you've got to innovate. And what happened during COVID was because it was so fast, we lost 87% of our revenue in 2 weeks. Now, just to sort of make it simple for the listeners out there to understand,
Make it simple, yeah.
yeah, we pay our suppliers on 30-day terms. We pay the staff on 14 days. They work and they get paid. The retail staff 7 days, corporate staff 14 days. So you've always got this big accounts payable book, and it's the only way to pay your debt is by keep operating, open the doors, and bring in revenue. When you have the amount also of fixed costs that we have in our business, fixed costs are rent. We signed rent contracts or lease contracts that last 10 years typically, and we're obligated to pay the rent. When you lose revenue at that velocity, you are in a absolute insolvency death spiral, and we were going to fail. There was really nothing it hit us so fast because of our footprint was so precarious. If we were in suburbs, if we had drive-throughs, if we weren't in states that we operated in, we were not in what is typically regarded as a red state. And there was a very different approach from, let's use some simple examples, Florida and Texas versus California and New York and Washington, D.C. So the business conditions and the business environment was very, very tough, and that decision was made to ensure that there was appropriate safeguards to keep people away, and there was you weren't able to seat people and you weren't able to serve them. But the complexity compounding that was also the quarantine requirements. So even if you're able to get some staff to operate a slither of stores. If one staff member tested positive, everyone in that was exposed or potentially exposed that could have worked a shift with them was knocked out for 2 weeks as well. So the complexity in juggling was at a level that I've only experienced once, and but it was so galvanizing and it was so liberating. And my point being about the switch to delivery and the digital was because of that environment and the extremities and the fact that we really thought, well, it couldn't get any worse. It can only get better. Well, let's throw caution to the wind. Let's be completely unbridled and go for it. So, who's got some good ideas? And that's how the 100% digital play came. That was how, okay, well, let's go live in all the third party delivery platforms. Let's refine our mission. We had three clear objectives. One, we had to keep as many stores as we could open so we could keep people employed. Secondly, we had to try and give a daily escape to our locals that were stuck in their apartment 23 hours a day, that often were stranded. They couldn't get home. They couldn't leave the country. Like, if you're Australian, you couldn't go to Australia. They banned everyone from basically coming home. And then thirdly, we had to be there for healthcare heroes. Healthcare heroes were working shifts that were unimaginable and dealing with issues that were simply horrific. And we won't go into the stories about the refrigerated semi-trailers in New York City that were everywhere, the mobile morgues, they had to get we had to fire them up. We had to give them the motivation to keep doing the hard work. And so that was huge for us. So when we just gave free coffee to healthcare heroes. You walked in with a badge, we gave you a free coffee. We did coffee drop-offs to all the major hospitals in most of our markets. I dropped coffee boxes off twice. The team were doing it, every week. We just shared the load, and it was amazing. We'd meet in the car park. We'd be gloved up. We'd have masks. Everything, like, it was extreme looking about it now, but we just wanted to do anything to inspire them, and that really crystallized the mission. And like, we're going to do whatever we can to get through this. And we were fortunate to access the PPP that really did keep us alive. So it served its purpose for Bluestone Lane. I think a lot of people out there didn't use the proceeds appropriately, but that's a whole nother topic. But it really helped, and we got through it. But when you've got nothing, but it couldn't get any worse, sometimes it is liberating just to try things, because it doesn't, the consequences aren't that dear. And I guess that's the best entrepreneurs have that approach. And I do not count myself in that bucket. But when I think about someone like Elon Musk, how much courage he has to try things, he's not he's not playing it safe. Like, he's going for it. And I guess, if you look at SpaceX alone as such a good
Yeah.
example of, how many
Who
he's out
competes
of
against
money,
NASA?
how many rocket explosions and
Yeah.
failed missions. And, he's like, well, it couldn't get any worse than an exploding rocket and everything we've built just, being incinerated. Well, why don't we try it one more time in a different approach and think laterally, or do some more work, and then we just that's pretty amazing. So it was a very hard time, a challenging, complicated time, but in hindsight, it brought out some amazing innovation for Bluestone Lane. And I was so proud and grateful to be part of a team that were willing to come forth with their ideas and execute. Because no one owns a good, like, Reid Hoffman has a really great saying, and I remember reading it maybe 8 years ago. He goes, "No one owns a good idea. Execution is everything." And it's right. Like, how many people do you know? Woulda, shoulda, coulda. Oh, I had that idea. Idea is simple. Execution is where it's hard. And like, even I meet people that might have very strong senses of self, think that they're pretty important and successful, and like, you know, um, how hard executing these things is, like how hard it is. Like, it's interesting. And I think I even look at banking, like me being an advisor, or we were providing financial capital. So, like, let's say we are an investor, we're providing credit, we're investing in this company with the expectation we're going to get a return and our money back. I think about the way I used to approach that versus now is I thought it was hard being an investor. Like honestly, versus executing, I don't know. I think execution and the operating and making a dream come to life is no, let's just not say it's either of them. Both of them are hard, but I've
Well, when you
certainly
when you
learned
think
a lot.
of what's at stake, right? Like, what's the worst that could happen when you're in a bank? You get fired, right? What's the worst that could happen at Bluestone? People lose their livelihoods and they blame you for it ultimately, even if it wasn't necessarily your fault. And you harp on the importance of adaptability. Um, do you know Eric Posner?
Sure do.
So
Great guy.
Eric's a good friend, has been on the show, featured him in one of the chapters of Audacious, and specifically that chapter, we talk about the power of adaptability, and he talks about his experience during COVID, and it's very, just hearing you talk, it's the same, different industries, but essentially the same mindset around being open to new ideas, not being afraid to do something different, and understanding that. You know, every minute you hesitate to think outside the box, especially in a situation like that, is not only going to impact, the livelihood of your business, but it's going to impact all of your stakeholders as well.
He's a really inspiring person and one of the nicest people I've met and so supportive. Someone I feel like he's always in your corner and he what he went through and the way his optimism was just extraordinary. His innovation, you take a lot from people like that. Like the world's obsessed with like determining success by money, and they're successful because they made 10 million bucks or 100 million bucks or $1 billion. They're a billionaire. They must be so successful. I don't know. Like, of course, everyone wants economic security. Of course, everyone would like to have the resources so they can pick and choose what they want to do in life and have great holidays and opportunities. But it just it can't determine whether you've had a fulfilling and successful life. It just can't. And the reason being is so many of the world's great thinkers and philosophers and innovators were not super wealthy.
Yeah.
Well,
Your balance is not going to be on your
Einstein,
tombstone, you
Einstein,
know?
Einstein wasn't a billionaire.
Yeah. Yeah, all of the people who you see quoted, like, online, right? If you were to scroll through an Instagram feed and potentially look at stories of people pushing out positive messages from old philosophers and the Stoics and whatnot, none of these tombstones are gonna have bank balances on them. But what resonated with all these people is how they worked with other people, how they made other people feel, and how they led by example, and how they spoke, with pure wisdom, in their heart, and allowed that to kind of propel them forward. And so, I think that that's absolutely right, and I love to see the collision of worlds here. And I've told people before, I invested with Eric when he started his business, and I tell people all the time when I'm making these investments, so far 100% of the investments that I've made, I've really just been investing in the person more so than the actual business. Of course, I believe in the business, but someone like that, I felt comfortable knowing that if crisis hit, he'd have the right mindset to adapt. And that's really what I think is most important for myself as an investor, and I feel like many others would agree there.
Yeah. I again, you, it's very hard, and I think it's very hard as young people out there that have grown up in this digital age where social media has been ubiquitous or is ubiquitous to believe what people are preaching the whole time, that it's a get rich quick scheme, that it's all about getting your ARR up to $1 million a month and you can do it. And all you need to do is buy my program and invest in, you know, this ad platform. And I think it's just, again, I would rather have more money than less, but I will not do it in a way that impacts what's most important. And ultimately, it takes a while. It's not until and to feel differently at a younger age is actually normal. It's not irrational. But when you get older, so when you hit 40, for example, things start happening that at a greater velocity than they did previously. People start getting sick. People die. Um, People get divorced. People have things that were probably pretty rare when you were 15, 20, 25, 27. Uh, People have children and the children might have health issues, whether that's physical or mental. And then you realize that all the money in the world, can't solve this problem. So, like, where's your priorities lie? And it's finding the balance. Again, you have to try and build businesses that are financially sustainable, that generate profit and cash flow, so you can continue to invest, continue to hire people, promote, provide that opportunity to grow and professional development. It's critically important. Like, there's no Bluestone unless we make money. Absolutely. I know that. And I want to maximize profit, but in a way that doesn't compromise either our values or our mission. And for Bluestone, we are a human connection company. We're not a coffee company. We are about facilitating connection and having locals, not customers. We're that daily ritual that you could have the worst night of your life and you walk in the morning and someone smiles and says, "G'day, mate. How are you? Good morning. How are you? Can I get you started? Hey, Johnny. Hey, Sally. Hey, Katie." And that's the power of hospitality. That's the power of service culture. You just have no idea what could have happened. Someone could have been up with their screaming baby all night. Someone could have split up with their partner. Someone could have been diagnosed or lost their job or something horrific happened. But to go into a safe space like your coffee shop or your cafe, where you walk in and you're recognized and you're a local, you're not a customer, you're part of our community, and it's a safe space. It's an aspirational environment. It's a humble environment. It's it's so powerful. And I think about the cafes and coffee shops that have done that for me, and they continue to do that for me. So it's finding the balance, but anything either way, if you're not focused enough on money, you're going to fail, or you're not going to be able to keep talent. But if money's everything, like, is that really what it's about? Like, and some businesses, that's what it is. That's the mission, and, like, don't worry about anything else. But in the case of Bluestone Lane and what we've done, our North Star is far more than just maximizing profits. If I wanted to maximize profits at Bluestone, I would change things absolutely, like, dramatically. I would buy cheaper products. I would buy paper products that were worse for the environment. I'd do drive-throughs. I wouldn't invest in cafes that bring people together. I'd just, like, do drive-throughs and, like, shovel product out the window. Like, I think that, I wasn't interested in those things because I created what I was missing. I had a selfish, unfulfilled need and created what I felt I needed to be successful in New York. And then it just evolved and went from one to two. And sure enough, there was other people like me that were looking for a better type of experience, not just a transaction.
Wow. No, I mean, I think that was so incredibly well said and thought out. I'm looking we have so much I wanna cover with you. So let me ask you quick hit questions because things I'm
Yeah.
interested about.
So,
How involved were you with the designs of the stores, the locations? I think that
yeah, I've always been the real estate decision maker, the design, very much. I brought in an Australian designer, store number 3, the Bluestone Lane Collective Cafe, that really took the brand to the next level.
yeah,
My wife and I were very keen that we wanted it to be more linked to beach,
yeah,
water, Australians and I, and that's when we brought in the seafoam tile, the aquamarines, the turquoise colors, that palette, because it was the first 2 stores was sort of like Brooklyn hipster looking, dingy, masculine. We wanted feminine. We wanted light. We wanted uh, tranquility. And we did it. And at the time, I promise you, no one was using colors like that. Now everyone does. Like, the amount of coffee brands that have now followed our coffee palette, like, they were black logos and now they're all blue. Yeah, imitation is the ultimate form of flattery, but we really, really set the scene there, and yeah, now you have more
But
inviting
shout
business.
out to your team there, because there is something about the aesthetics, even from the sign, that psychologically, even if you don't know what Bluestone is, you want to know what's inside. And I've heard some people, speak to that, just kind of like seeing the outside of a Bluestone, and how it's aesthetically built. So I think that's such a key, element to your business, and I want to make sure that you hear that from me as something that,
Thanks.
yeah.
Well, the name, I came up with the name. It's synonymous for the cobblestone Bluestone Lane ways in Melbourne and Sydney. The logo, I wanted it to be Victorian and sort of regal. I didn't want Australians to be perceived as like Outback Steakhouse or Crocodile Dundee. I wanted it to be more consistent with the coffee and cafe culture and the hospitality culture in Australia, which is much more sophisticated, particularly in Melbourne. It's a very cosmopolitan, sophisticated city. Alexandra drew the logo, and then the logo went to a graphic designer, and then they had an interpretation, and it came to life. It was not a long process at all. So yeah, they're like special moments, but the whole thing, the brand has been handcrafted. Yeah, the first the I remember Alexandra with chalkboard drawing the menu, before we opened. Everything has been done so organically. And I think people forget that they see it as the way it is now, and that there must have been all these people involved. There was no one. I didn't leave banking until we have 12 location. I was always
Oh, wow.
CEO,
Till
but
12?
till 12 because the
Wow.
business one, I didn't know if the business was going to be successful. Two, I didn't know what I'd do if I went full time because we had a couple of stores. And then three, the business couldn't afford an overhead. We had to reach, we had investors. Most of the first round we raised was $350,000, which it's definitely a sizable amount of money, that's for
Yeah.
sure. But
But in New York City, to get to where you
no,
need to go, it's
well,
nothing.
especially when you're building stores in New
Yeah,
York
yeah,
City,
yeah.
it's not like, like to build a Starbucks in New York City, they probably spend 1.5 million. So,
Yeah, yeah.
um, it was, but it got us to two stores, and we were able to basically pay back very quickly, which then unlocked. We did a Series B, which was 1 million, and that was like 25 people that came in, anything from $25,000 check through to maybe 100,000, but most people were 25 or 50 grand, and that got us another three stores or so, including collective cafes, including the Grace Building in Bryant Park. But it was so hands on, and I didn't want to spend money in overhead, and I still don't now. Like, I think it's all done through execution. I like having a small aligned focus team, not a big team. Every time that we've hired a lot of people, and often it's been through external opinion, whether it's investors or others have said, "Oh, you've got to hire up. You need to build your team." You don't need to build your team. What you need to do is you need to formulate a really aligned team that are very productive, bought in, and aligned with the values. You do not need just bodies for the sake of bodies. You need the right bodies. Right bus, the right seat, on the right route. And for me, every time I've hired, because it's been encouraged, yeah, it's pretty much unsustainable. We basically unwind it, and you got to find the balance. And it's a bit like a rubber band. Like, the rubber band must have tension. You can't snap it, but it's got to have tension to operate at the level that you're seeking, which is to push and challenge. And that's why a lot of high performance teams are small. That's why SEAL teams are what, 6 people or 9 people or something. They're not like, oh, we go out as a group of 20. No, they move faster and more nimbly, and they're just exceptionally trained and aligned and bought into the vision. And there's most importantly in high performance teams is trust. The trust is just so deep, and it's been established through buying into the norms, buying into the values, socializing, and just through getting things done. That generates trust. When you work alongside someone tackling challenges, when there's clear accountability, there's clear delineation of roles, but you have to work together and you're accountable for it. It can breed fantastic results and success. When you're in a big team, there can be a lot of finger pointing and a lack of the ability to diffuse accountability. And that just won't drive the best level of performance, because accountability is not it shouldn't be seen as a negative word. Accountability is, I'm going to try and execute on this project and to the best of my ability. And if it works or it doesn't, I'm accountable for that. If it doesn't work, that's okay. Most things don't. Learn from it, own it. Let's get in there and clean up the mess and then get on to the next thing. The worst periods I've had at Bluestone have been this obsession with blame, that it went wrong because of this person. I'm not really interested in that. I will know who ultimately probably made
What's
an
behind
error
it?
or
Yeah.
didn't. Yeah. What I'm really focused on is how fast we recover. And a lot of that is linked to sports. No matter what happens in sports, there's going to be errors. Someone's going to drop the ball. They could be trained every day of their life. There's going to be errors. Now, you've got to minimize the impact of those mistakes. Even the best soccer players, and I think there's a lot of there's great quotes by Jordan about how many shots he missed, and same thing about Federer. Federer in his Dartmouth address to the graduating class was all about that he lost. It's incredible, like his win loss ratio, and then he talked about, like, effectively he won over a course of a match. He might win 20 more points, and that got in the match. So, like, minimizing those mistakes, decompartmentalizing it, and then just rallying and fixing it and working together and trying to put in place processes that it's not repeated again. Like, that's the most important thing. Well, that's certainly in my eyes, and that's how I've tried to lead. That
No,
okay,
I think
it's
that's, like the parallels between how to lead, whether it be in business or in life and sport, there's just so many. And that path is one that we see come on this show so much. And again, just to hear it from you and hear it from you in your position, and you combine that with um the humility behind the birth of Bluestone. Like, I didn't know you didn't leave until your 12th store. Like, that's amazing that you continue to stick it out. And you were nimble, and you were um methodical about how and when you went about it. um, I want to make sure, as we round things out, we hit on this very important question, because you said at the very beginning of this episode, you chased your wife down to New York. And so you chased your wife down to New York. You mentioned you have 3 children now. I'm a father of 2. And so I can speak from personal experience how fatherhood has profoundly impacted my own trajectory, and how literally the next day, one day you have no kids, the next day you have kids, and everything changes with regards to how you go about your business, personal and professional. Um, and so my question to you is, talk to us about the role that they've played from the very early days where you were chasing down your wife to where you are today, and how that's impacted you as a person and as a leader with Bluestone.
It's such a privilege, right? It's such a gift to be a father, and I'm so indebted to Alexandra because, let's be honest, in the early days, the gestation, the delivery, and then certainly in those first few years, the load on mum is physiologically just so much greater than anything a dad can do. So it's better than I thought it would be. Like, and I'm not trying to sound naive. It's just a really special thing, and it's an amazing thing, and I think it's getting better. Like, the relation, I think it's just getting better. Like, now that they're all showing their personalities are on full display, and their language and their independence and their ability to do things together as a collective little tribe is really inspiring. And certainly, the opportunity cost is real. Like, when you're spending time at work or in other sort of individual endeavors, you just got to realize that like there's people that really want to be with you, and I think honestly with the kids, like it's been so good in navigating the hard times. And last year at Bluestone Lane was my hardest year professionally, 2023. I've never had the level of disillusion and just um, sadness. It was a really hard year. We had a lot of cultural challenge. A lot of my team didn't want to be at Bluestone because of things that had changed with people that had come in, and it was really hard to navigate. I was trying to build bridges the whole time, but also manage the company as well as I could, and that led to a lot of self reflection and what do I want to do and what's my best role and things like that. But I walk in the door and your kids, they don't care. They don't care that you've been through this challenge. They just want to hug you. They want your attention. They want you to focus on them. They don't want you to look at your phone or your emails or get back to that person. And that's amazing. And now I've got more clarity. Like I really want to make sure that they have a fantastic childhood, the one that I was so privileged to have. I want to make sure that they have access to new experiences uh, that I had. And yeah, I'm so indebted to Alexandra. What a gift that she provided. And yeah, like there's plenty of hard days. There's plenty of days that's frustrating. Every morning trying to get them to school is always like, dancing on a um, tightrope. Sometimes they don't want to go. Sometimes they're running late. Sometimes they're fighting. Sometimes they're playing around and trying to distract you to not go to school. But it's Fridays are pretty magical because when I come home, I normally try and stop work at about 4 p.m. and just have like that late afternoon, early dinner with them, which is great. And then if I've got to do more work, I'll do it at night, or I'll work on Saturday and Sunday. I don't really see it as work. It's Bluestones. Yes, it's work, but it's basically a hobby too that I love doing, and I do 7 days a week. And most founders would sort of say the same thing, but it's really cool, and I'm very fortunate, and I see it that way because I also have a lot of friends that have had a lot of challenge with fertility and being able to be parents, and I've also got dear friends that have had a lot of health issues with their children, and what is extraordinary is they persevere and they still have to provide and they still have to execute their role as a parent. And they're probably the people I admire the most, honestly. And I've been very fortunate. Our kids have been healthy, and we haven't really had any major issues. Thus, touch wood, and neither has Alexandra and I from a health perspective. Nothing's ever perfect, but nothing major. So yeah, I love that you care so much about it, and I do think that it's 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 priceless. It is priceless, and I judge people a little bit, honestly, about the relationships they have with their kids. Like I definitely think it sort of tells a bit of a story into how who they are deep down, and like have they got their priorities right? Because that's real legacy. That when you leave the planet, you want your kids to be amazing citizens and custodians of your family name, or uh, whether it's the parental or maternal name. Um, so yeah, it's pretty it's pretty magical.
Thank you. That's so wonderfully put, wonderfully said. I couldn't agree with you more. You're right. Like, and for all the listeners out there, whether or not you have kids, when you come home, they don't care if you close that deal. They don't care. Uh, you know, they don't care about the solution and whether or not it was figured out in the office. they don't care about any of the phone calls you had all day or any of the emails that went back and forth. And so it really sheds a whole new perspective on everything. And it really forces you to compartmentalize and understand, where the priorities lie. Nick, that was such a wonderful answer, and it was such a perfect way to close this out. I just want to say thank you. Thank you for making time for Mile 40, for coming on the show. I'm incredibly grateful for you. Huge fan of what you've built, and I'm excited to watch you continue to, take Bluestone to the next level and really impact not just your immediate family, but everybody who's involved in the Bluestone community.
Oh, thank you. It's been a pleasure to be on, and it's a real privilege to do what I do. I'm so grateful to the team, locals, and of course, like our investors from the very start when they backed me in and backed in this vision. And hasn't been all perfect sailing, that's for sure, but we persevere, and I am really, really grateful that we've been able to make a difference to some communities and locals and teammates. So have a great day. Appreciate the time.
Thank you, brother. Thank you for listening today. If you enjoyed this episode of the Mile 40 podcast, go ahead, subscribe, leave a review, and share the word. Thank you for being a part of the Mile 40 family. And let's unite in showing the world that comebacks are always greater than setbacks.